Hello and welcome to Opinions Plus. The topic of today is the Christmas Carol, and the main focus is on Ebenezer Scrooge. I also tried to do this 2 or 3 times, and I've always had problems with the sound. So I had to resort to just the old computer. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever master this stuff, but you know, we'll see how it goes. But let's hope, and keeping the spirit of hope, keeping hope alive, that this will be at least audible. And thank you for your patience on these things. Appreciate that. Scrooge. Scrooge is, a person of poor character. He is Ebenezer Scrooge is, the Scrooge McDuck, the cheap, no good, dastardly individual who had no empathy, no sympathy, no hope in his heart for his future or anybody else's. His point was to live and make money. He was miserly to a fault. He lived in a very, even though he apparently had buku money, according to the story, he never even applied it to himself. He never used it for himself. He never, even had a fire in the grate to keep himself warm because it didn't affect him. He let the focus of money, greed, and power take control. And it overcame even his physical needs. But if you know the story, and Dickens is a fabulous writer, if you know the story at all, and if you haven't read it, it's a relatively short story, or listen to it on audiobook. It's on YouTube, an audiobook, different narrators. Some are better than others, but very good. And then you have the movies, multiple movies. When Dickens wrote it, it was back in 1843. And, you have to kind of keep in mind what the times were then, as far as, attitudes and even labor attitudes. Child labor was common. There was indentured servitude, slavery, not in the England slavery as there was in America, but these young people were tied to their masters. They worked for very little, just room and board, basically. Somehow to get above, somehow in hopes to get above, and somehow to be employed by a decent human being. Well, in the story of A Christmas Carol, Scrooge didn't have servants. I guess he had some people come in to keep the house up and whatnot. But in general, he had a payroll of a few people, and one of the main characters in the book was Bob Cratchit, who was one of his employees. He was a clerk. But obviously he had others because he had warehouses and he had, storage facilities and, shipping facilities and whatnot, that he employed people. He had, and it was inferred he had lots of money. It wasn't said that he was the wealthiest guy in London, but he had plenty of money. But one of the criticisms in the book was that he didn't even spend it on himself. He didn't have a fire at night. Everything was cheap, miserly. to a fault, to a character flaw. And then he was visited by three spirits or ghosts. And it's the idea that, Scrooge was in the way Dickens portrayed him initially in the book as a person who was a businessman through and through, 100%. No coddling, no nothing, just business. When Bob Cratchit at Christmas Eve, Scrooge is walking out of the office and he says, "I guess you want the full day tomorrow." And Cratchit says, "Well, if it's not inconvenient, sir." And Scrooge says, "Of course it's inconvenient. I'm paying you a full day's wage for no work." Pretty direct, and I couldn't find a flaw in that. But it's not treated that way in today's world because it's part of your salary today. Days off and all these things, all these federal holidays that many people have. There's many people that have to work on Christmas, even today. The poor don't get a way around it. Poor never do. And, it is people in this political arena always cutting from the poor, taking away from the poor, giving to the wealthy and taking away from the poor. Common thing. Well, Scrooge, he didn't want to give away money to anybody. There's a couple of characters that come up to him and ask him for donations to help feed the poor and the suffering during this season of Christmas. Again, there was an inference there. Well, who really cared about the other days? Well, in this season of giving, of Christ's birth, let's help the poor out a little bit. And Scrooge says, no, I'm not giving any money. I don't celebrate Christmas myself. Why should I give to others to help them out? Let them do what they have to do. Then he asked, is there workhouses? Are there, the social facilities for the poor and the disadvantaged? Are they in function? He said, "Oh, well, yes, they are, sir. They're, but of course they were horrible places to live. If anybody read Oliver Twist and saw the orphanages and those things, these are horrible places, terrible, abusive places." But Scrooge didn't care. He didn't want to visit them. He didn't want to know anything about them. He knew he was paying taxes to support them, and that's as far as he went. And then he said, well, the one gentleman says, well, many would rather die than go to one of these places. They're so bad. And Scrooge says, well, if they want to die, let them die and decrease the surplus population. Well, there's a logic there. I mean, it's mean-spirited, obviously, and it was used, his words were used against him by the spirit of Christmas present, against him, when he was feeling the empathy and the communication, the context of Tiny Tim and seeing what value people have to one another. Because he didn't know that at the time when he was bah humbugging Christmas. His heart was not there. It may have been there in Christmas past, would you get some little connection, and the fear is starting to come in Christmas future, which solidified the change in character to Mr. Scrooge so that he became a better man. He overcame these desires of greed, this desire of selfishness that creates this. It's like an addiction because people have to give in order to be happy. And it's not money. It's not always money. They kind of imply these things, but it's not. When you say give, you don't have to give a gift. It's not gifts on Christmas or money to the poor or whatever. It's you. It's your attitude. It's what you do. It's your help. It's your availability to help a neighbor when they need it. Some neighbors you don't want to help. I mean, there's not everything works out. But it's not a universal thing, but it's something within you that grows and amplifies the joy, the hope, the charity, the agape, the giving, the acceptance of other people as important. Important enough that you can care for them. Even if you're an invalid and you care, you empathize, you shed a tear when you see sorrow and tragedy. You see the suffering around you and you honor it. Honor it by crying about it, by sharing it, by seeing it. You don't have to give to some organization. You can feel it. You can bring it out. You may not have the money to give. You may not have the resources or the ability, but you give from your heart, your spirit. And that's what Scrooge learned was this empathetic concept, this desire that overcame, that shedded the skins of this horrible disease or addiction of wealth and money and selfishness, and exploring the giving to the world around them, outside yourself, giving back to yourself at the same time. It's that simple. But what he was tasked, or portrayed in the book, as Dickens wrote, he wasn't, some of these things were pretty harsh, especially in context of today. But you look back in the context of 1843, they weren't. People really could care less. Everybody was a Scrooge, or many people were Scrooges then. They didn't care one lick about the people, the poor, the children. They didn't care. Many cared. Always, there are many, many that care. But the people in power, again, it goes back to this stuff all the time. And Scrooge was a guy in power. He had money, he had prestige. But he changed. That's what the light of Christ did. That's what these ghosts did. The Dickens story doesn't illustrate Christian Christ in the story itself. They talk about the holiness of the day and the preeminence of God, but it's not, throughout the book. The human spirit is about the book. And Christ's spirit is engaged in that because the goodness comes from goodness. Whether you believe in Christ or not, that's what Christmas is, the birth of Christ, celebrating the birth of Christ. That's why it's there. That's why we have it. So we give it. But not everybody believes in Christ, but they can still feel that spirit, that societal giving, that Scrooge learned and overcame and became a better man for it. Not a perfect man, but a better man. And that's what we all try to do, to become better people, better ideas, better empathetic constructs in our lives and in our future. Read the Christmas Carol. It's all over the internet, or, books everywhere, but audiobooks are just fabulous. And the guy's, Dickens is one heck of a writer. And A Tale of Two Cities touch your heart. When Lucy meets her father for the first time, she's 18 years old, and he's in prison, and he's lost most of his mind. Dickens, the way he writes about it, touches your heart. So, anyway, if you like what you see, subscribe. If you can, hit the like button. Make comments. Always comment. You never know when, if it's a one-liner, 2 words, whatever it is. People read it. They see it. It doesn't have to be responded to, but share it. Put it out there. Share that, share the empathy, share the gifts you have. And again, it's not money, it's not a present, it's you. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Happy New Year. May your New Year's be blessed, and hopefully all this stuff will just become just one Merry Christmas every day. Take care. Bye for now.